Thank you for choosing to watch this video, which I'll be tying an unweighted nymph pattern, which takes a lot of inspiration from the Jedi Master fly. Start by mounting your hook in the vise and testing the hold. This is one of Fulling Mill's heavyweight grub hooks in size 14. It's a nice strong wire on this hook. Then catch on your tying thread. Here I'm using some of Semperfli's classic waxed 12 knot in a wood duck. I chose this colour as it will form the colour of the body. Once the thread's caught on, trim away the waist end and form an underbody. I'm going to aim for just about touching turns, which can be slightly more difficult to maintain as you come round the curve of the hook. You want to tape the body quite deep round the curve to get a nice profile on this fly. The next step in the tying is to catch in the tails. For this we're using some Coq de Leon fibres. Select a few and catch these in. The feather I have used here is taken from a Whiting Farm saddle. It's quite an efficient way to buy the feathers. Take your time catching the tails in. You want them to sit on top of the hook shank. Once you've got them caught in, check where they're sitting nicely, and then catch in down the full length of the body. I like to hold the waist ends as I tie them in to make sure they keep sitting on top of the hook. This just helps to keep the profile of the fly nice. Once you've got them caught into your satisfaction, trim off the waist end, and then we'll catch in the body material. Now, this is a clear necklace elastic. You want to slightly heat the end and pull it to give you a thin tie-in point. This wants to curl up, so it can be a bit fiddly to work with, but if you pull it out and then pinch and loop over the top, then you can pull it through so you can tie it in at the thinnest point. And once you've got it caught in with a wrap or two of thread, trim away the waist end, and you can, as you tie it in, you want to stretch it so you're not putting too much bulk into the fly. And you can really stretch this quite hard. You can feel once you get it to the end of the elastic stretch, and that's you stop at that point as you tie it in. And you want to tie it down to where you tied the tail in to make sure all of the thread underbody will be covered by the elastic. Once you're happy, take the thread back up and we can tidy up the tie-in point for the body material. After that, I then take the opportunity to make sure I'm happy with the underbody, and I want to build it up slightly to create a little profile so the thickness increases up to the top of the body just behind where the thorax will start. You'll notice I'm holding the body material back out of the way so it's not getting, as I say, in the way or getting trapped as I form the underbody. You don't need to make the underbody too thick, as we can control the thickness of the body material as we wrap it as well. But we do want to make sure there's no bumps or sudden steps in the underbody. So that's looking about right, so now I'll start to wind the body material. So just be careful with the first wrap that you're sitting over the top of the thread and you're happy with where it's sitting. And I'll wind it up under a good bit of tension, almost as much as you could pull. And as I wind it up, I'll make sure we're in touching turns. You almost try and overlap the last wrap. That'll make it sit nice and snug against the previous wrap. And as we work up the body, I'll reduce the tension slightly and progressively. This will make the material thicker as I wind it and add to the taper. And once you've got to where the body ends, hold it in place and catch it in with a couple of turns of thread. Then we can pull it forward and stretch it as we tie it in now. Another couple of turns and then a few locking wraps before we trim it away, and pull it tight as you trim it. We'll give it a nice neat cut off point. This material gives a lovely translucent body. As we tidy up the tying point, we'll also tie in the thorax cover, which for this pattern I'm using some of Veniard's Uni Mylar tinsel. I'm using a pearl tinsel to give a nice little flashback to the thorax cover. Make sure it's sitting nice and square on the top of the hook, so it will be central on your thorax when you pull it forward, and tie it down back to the top of the body, making sure you've got it snug against the end of the body, or if you want to be really sure about it, you could go back one wrap into the body just to make sure there's no step or ugly gap between the body and the thorax. At this point I'll take the time to tidy up under the thorax area before dubbing on the thorax itself. For this I'm using some of Flow Mill's Eco Warrior dubbing in Pepperbox. It's quite a nice dark natural dubbing. It works well in this situation. Once you find your dubbing on the mess of your tying desk, apply it to the thread. As with all dubbing, it's squeeze as tightly as you can between your fingers and wind it on in the same direction. Make sure you've got the dubbing back to your tying point for your thorax cover on the end of the body, and slowly build it up, making sure the thorax is a good bit thicker, maybe about a third thicker than the body. And make sure you're covering the thorax area well. Sometimes it helps to moisten your fingers a little bit. You could always use some wax if you wanted to. So once you're happy with where the thorax is dubbed, a clear wrap in front to make sure everything's no fibres going forward. Pull your thorax cover across and catch in with a couple of turns of thread and then a locking turn in front of it, and then you can trim away the waist end. The next step is to tie in some gills. So for these I'm using some of Flow Mill's Microflash Dub UV in the dun colour. So I'll pick a small bunch out of the dubbing and align it a little bit by pulling them apart with my fingers, and then I'll roll it into a twist. And then I'll catch this in with a pinch and wrap on the top of the hook. It can be a little bit fiddly, but you want to take your time and make sure you're not trapping any fibres going the wrong way. If there are any, just tweak them out of the way. Once you've got it caught in with one wrap, twist it round and secure with a second, and then fold the fibres back and hold them so they're pointing almost under the hook, and then tidy up, forming a nice neat head. Check you're happy with how the gill fibres are sitting. Once you're happy with where they're sitting and you've got a nice neat head, throw on a 3-turn whip finish. And trim away the waist end of the thread. then apply some head varnish, or in this case some of the Raid Zap's thin UV resin, to the head of the fly. So take your time and be careful not to get any of the resin into the gills or too much into the thorax. It's okay to get any on the thorax cover, as we'll put a bit more resin on the top of that anyway. And just make sure you've got a nice coating around the head of the fly. And we'll set that with the UV lamp. You can see the slight kick and flash in the gill fibres, which is, now we didn't cut the gill fibres before this point because I want to use those. I can use the length of those to pull them out of the way as I apply Raid Zap medium resin over the top of the thorax, make it a bit more robust and give it a nice profile. So I'll put a little bit of the resin from the bottle into a dubbing needle to give me a bit more precision in the application and allow me to spread it out easily. It doesn't take a lot of resin to do this, and you want to keep it quite neat and keep it just on top of the tinsel if you can, and blend it slightly into the body. And I find that once you've got it up in position and you're happy with it, if you turn it upside down, it helps it to hold its position. It's less likely to move off into the thorax itself. Set the resin with the UV lamp, and that's the tying just about finished. Just need to trim the gills to length. So I want to trim them to just about or just short of the hook point. This seems to give them a nice length and works well. Once you've got them trimmed, I'll come in with a dubbing brush and tweak out some of the thorax, give that nice buggy, leggy effect. And make sure you're happy with where everything's sitting. Tweak away any longer fibres that you're not happy with, and that's the fly finished. Thank you for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. If you have, please drop it a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to be kept up to date on any future videos.